Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Babin.
This is a self-portrait. This is a sketch from my journal when I was just finishing college. The caption says, "Yes, sir, I just got out of school." And it pretty accurately describes my state of mind. I was essentially a deer in the headlights as I ventured out into the world of Hollywood and sought to be accepted and welcomed. It was around this time that I met a director of photography by the name of John Alonso. John Alonso, best known for shooting Chinatown and the Scarface with Pacino. I loved his work. He was one of my heroes in the world of cinematography. And I was fortunate enough to run into him on the street, right outside of Warner Brothers studio. "Mr. Alonso, so good to meet you. You're one of my heroes. I've been out of school for about 6 months now. I managed to get into the union that controls commercials. I'm trying to get into IA now to get into the union that controls camera work in movies and TV." And he looked me right in the eye with an incredible moment of "I see you." And he said, "Paul, I'm telling you what you're going to do. You're going to go call Dick Barlow, who's the head of the camera department at Warner Brothers, make an appointment to see him, and you're going to tell him I sent you." Okay. God himself had come down and said, "You're one of us." So I went home. That's what I did. I called Dick Barlow. Voice on the end of the line, "Mr. Barlow, I told him my story. And John Alonso said, "I call you and come in and meet you." And the voice on the other end said, "Yeah, well, I get to work at 6 a.m. And before I knew it, the phone call was over. Now, 40 years ago, there were no metal detectors on studio gates. And if you walked with authority, if you walked like you knew what you were doing, you could walk right onto the lot. And that's what I did at 5:50 a.m. the next morning. I entered the office of Dick Barlow. It was so early, even his receptionist secretary was not there. I poked my head down the hall, and I saw a pair of feet up on a desk. And I made my way down the hall into the office of Dick Barlow. He was reading the newspaper. His eyes shifted over to me for a moment, went back to the newspaper. I sat down opposite him, described my desires, my limited experience, how important it was for me to get into the industry. He continued to read his newspaper. It was the sports section. And I remember it was the sports section because he never put the newspaper down. I delivered my pitch to a page of box scores. After about 10 minutes, I ran out of steam, stood up, said "thank you very much," and walked out. Dick Barlow was not interested in seeing me. And then all these what ifs come up. What if he'd had the courage to be vulnerable? What if he had the courage to be seen? What if I'd had the courage and self-esteem to call him out, ask him if he treated everybody that way? What if I could have gotten past my fear? Fear often shows up as toughness or meanness, especially in men. The armor comes on, there's not a lot of talk or eye contact. It's not an effective way to lead. How many of you have found yourself working for someone where you're making your choices about what to do based on whether or not they'll yell at you? See, should I do the right thing or should I do whatever it is it's going to not make them yell at me? I know there are legends about directors who treated their actors with cruelty to get the performance they wanted. In my career, that's the exception. I frankly can't recall that ever happening. The vast majority of the directors out there make it their responsibility to create safety for their actors. To do that, a director has to be comfortable with emotions, starting with their own. Peter Weir was a director who was comfortable with his emotions.